and everything seemed to go really well. I had very little morning sickness, and then week 9 I started to get a little bit of morning sickness in the sense of just nausea. I wasn't even throwing up, but there are just certain things that I definitely wasn't going to eat. Everything seemed great, and then week 11, that Wednesday of week 11, I remember that I had a little bit of cramping, maybe, but I really wasn't really concerned. And then I had like a large amount of like clear liquid discharge, and I wasn't sure what it was. I know that someone had once said, or I had done some research and I found that that could be cause of the amniotic fluid leaking. So I tried not to get too concerned. You know, my husband prayed for me, and of course that was very comforting. And so I just tried to remain very positive about what the possibilities were, and I just figured I would track it. And if anything continued, that I would, go to my midwife. And I was using a midwife instead of going to the OBGYN. We were keeping up with, all of the numbers that we needed to keep up with. We had decided to have an ultrasound at week 20 so that we could check to make sure of any kind of, physical issues with the baby that we would need to be prepared for upon birth. But we were just being very natural about the process and trusting that my body was going to do what it needed to do, because our bodies are created to heal themselves if we give them the opportunity and the means, and to be able to have babies. We've been doing it for thousands of years. So I just really trusted in my body and my ability to know what to do. And again, as I tell you, I'm a chiropractic student, and so I have a lot of understanding of what the body is supposed to do and being able to read it and its numbers and all of that kind of a thing. So that was Wednesday of week 11. And then Thursday, I started to feel just a little bit of cramping, but very light. I mean, it's just very light, but nonetheless, I took notice because I was like, that's new and that's different. So of course, as moms to be, we're aware of every single little thing. I mean, my gosh, every little thing. I would check every time that I went to the bathroom. I would, wonder what every color was, any change. I, tried to figure out what that was all about. So when I had the cramps, I started getting just a little concerned, and then I noticed that I was spotting a little bit. And that was definitely different. But then I had also read plenty of times that that you could spot and you could bleed, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a problem. But certainly when you have cramping and spotting, you should take a little closer notice to that. So I did. And I tried to rest, and I just tried to be calm, and I tried to have positive thoughts, and just tried to be cool about it. Well, Friday, I noticed a little bit more cramping and a little bit more spotting later on into the evening. Both Thursday and Friday, it was after, my day was over and I was done with school, and my husband and I were lying on the couch with each other. And so I started getting a little bit more concerned, and I kind of already started deciding that if something more were to transpire, that I would have to be prepared for that. So the next morning, I was almost expecting what happened, and I woke up Saturday morning, and I had much more spotting. In fact, it wasn't spotting at all. It was more like I had had a period. And I had definitely been cramping throughout the night, which was a new thing. So I pretty much had a strong feeling. I knew that I was starting to have a miscarriage. And it just so happens that morning I had a physical that I had to do at our clinic with a patient. So I went ahead and went. My husband and I talked about it, and I just wanted to have faith that we weren't going to be having a miscarriage. And I felt like I needed to act like it wasn't going to happen in order for me to feel like I was having faith that it wasn't going to happen. And so he, gave me lots of love and lots of hugs. And I had a couple moments where I just broke down in tears because I just had a really strong feeling as to what was going to happen. And I was trying to go ahead and process it. And he said, okay, if you go, you're just going to have to put on your big girl panties. And I was like, yep, you're right. So it's my choice. I'm going to go. I'm going to just make it happen. And I went. And And between getting from the home to the clinic, I had been bleeding more, and so I didn't have any pads or anything at the time, so I just used some toilet paper, and I was working with my patient, and I had to take a break every once in a while to go to the bathroom, and that's when I started really bleeding, and also passing large chunks of tissue. I'm assuming that would be the placenta. It sort of looked like that. So we got through the physical, and I had told my my doctor who was watching over our process there I had told her what was going on, so she kind of knew and helped me through the process as well to wrap things up quickly. And by the time I started leaving, I had passed a ton of tissue, large amounts of blood, and so I stopped, and I got I got some comfort food. I got gummy bears because I love gummy bears, and robin's eggs because, well, that just always makes you feel good. And I hadn't been eating anything like that prior while I was pregnant. So I just stayed really clean while I was pregnant, and of course I wasn't drinking, and I was trying to eat all organics and just trying to eat mostly fruits and vegetables and lean proteins and water. I wasn't drinking any caffeine. So I was like, okay, well, let's go for it. So I went to my husband's work. He was a bartender, and I went there and I hung out with him for a while because I just didn't want to be by myself, and I wanted to be with the man that I love and the human on earth that loves me the most and is just there for me and knew what was going on. And I kept feeling well, at that time it was more like cramps. I was feeling really strong cramps, and so I would go to the bathroom there at the restaurant, and I would pass more tissue, some large clumps, like large pieces. You could just kind of tell it was like the placenta and the wall of the uterus starting to slough off. And I'm, of course, Googling, trying to figure out, what's going to come next and what to do about it. And I left there after a few hours, after I was feeling like I just understood and I knew what was happening, and we had kind of talked about it and talked about some of our plans and how we wanted to proceed. So I went home. I went home to kind of finish the process or just continue. And again, I kept having cramps and kept passing more. And every time I had cramps, I'd go to the bathroom because I knew I was getting ready to pass more. And then suddenly I started having contractions, and this was so surprising. It's one thing, and I was angry or sad about it at the time, because it's one thing to have contractions and to know that you're having contractions so that you can have a baby, because the process of birth is natural, and although it can be painful, it is good, and it's important, and every part of it is important, and everything that happens in the body is important for the baby's health and for the process of having the baby and then bonding with the baby afterwards. So it's such an important thing to allow that to occur and embrace it, because it is one of the most beautiful things we'll ever be able to do, and only we women can do it. So I had been ready for that, but I wasn't ready to do that and not get anything from it. So I started having contractions, and it was pretty surprising. And I knew that I was going to be passing more. And so my very first set of contractions got stronger and stronger and stronger. And it was so painful. And I just leaned over my chiropractic table here in my home, and I just rubbed the lower part of my belly right over my uterus, kind of like I was kind of trying to massage it out, whatever was coming out next. And that pressure felt good, and it helped, although it was still extremely painful, and I have a very high pain tolerance, I would have to say. So it was very, very painful. And so I went to the bathroom, and as weird or gross as it may be, I wanted to keep anything that came out, in the sense of if there was an amniotic sac or if there was a fetus. I wanted to inspect it, and I wanted to see what it was about. Again, I've studied these things, and certainly, you never get the opportunity to really get a hands-on experience with it. So I I kept what came out that time anyway, if it seemed significant, and I also wanted to keep the fetus, or to inspect the fetus anyway, if I was able to. I guess I really just didn't want to have it and it go down the toilet, you know? I didn't want my baby to go down the toilet, so I wanted to make sure that I could keep that and dispose of it in a way that felt appropriate to us at the time. And so what came out was what you might find on Google. It looked like the shape of a football. And it was rather small. I guess it was actually more like the size of a really large lemon, but more football shape. So I knew that that was a significant thing. So I saved that. I got that out of the toilet with a slotted spoon, and I refused to tell my husband which one because then we'd probably have to throw it away. And I put it in the tub so that I could rinse it off and take a look at it. And I left it there because I didn't know if my husband would be interested. So that set of contractions passed, and then I just had some more cramping, and the contractions kind of were light. From that point on, they were light, and then they would get a little stronger and a little stronger and a little stronger, just like you would expect if you were going to have a baby. So they kept building, and then they would, culminate with a heavier contraction, a stronger contraction, and then I would, pass some more tissue. And the larger the tissue, the stronger the contractions were, just like you would expect. Your strongest contractions are when you're actually pushing the baby out. And that's what I found. I found that that first set of contractions that were really strong and really, really painful passed the largest piece. And from then on, they became less. And my husband finally came home, and he was wonderful, and he rubbed my back, and he helped me, and whatever it was that I needed, he was there for me. And then if I just wanted to deal with it on my own, he was willing to be in my space, but not really do anything. So we finished out the process of passing all the tissues, and by the end of that Saturday night, by the time we went to bed, it seemed like I had passed most everything. So I still didn't know what to expect. You read about it, and the books and online Google says that you might bleed for a couple of weeks, and it might be a few weeks, it might be a few days. It doesn't really tell you exactly what you can expect, but that's because we're all different and our bodies are all going to process it differently. So I armed myself with the biggest pads I could find because I had to go to school, and I didn't know what that was gonna look like exactly.